Morning, everyone. We were just running things down to the wire there. Luckily, Tony's a very experienced presenter. Got no problem with all these last-minute things. And I'm a very experienced chairman. I wasn't that worried, honestly. But great you're all here. Tony, how are you? Are you good to go? We can see your screen share and everything.
Yeah, I am good to go.
Marvellous, marvellous. Well, welcome everyone to session 4 a.m, although it's actually 9 a.m. No pun intended.
US time.
And we've got Tony here to talk about APIs on the Z platform. So without further ado, Tony, if you can carry on with your presentation, please.
Sure, thanks very much, Rob. So hi everyone, I hope everyone can hear me okay, see me okay. So I'm Anthony Papagiorgio. I'm the technical strategy lead for integration on the IBM Z platform. That was quite a recent role change. Before that, I was the product manager for ZOS Connect for some years. But in my wider remit, I get to talk about futures and direction and strategy and things like that. So that's very exciting. So this is obviously a live presentation. Please do take advantage of that. If you have questions as we go along, feel free to ask them in the chat. I've got it on my other screen here, so I should keep an eye on that. Nick, Rob, if I miss something, then just shout and prompt me.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick will keep an eye on the chat for you, Tony, so don't worry about that. Perfect.
All right. So let's get going. So first thing is just a plug for our charity raffle at GSE UK, supporting lifeboats and guide dogs for the blind. And yeah, link is there. Be as generous as you feel like you want to be. So I'm going to put a disclaimer up. I know everyone goes, oh, boring disclaimer. This is a future session. So at the bottom of this column on the left-hand side here, it's a very important statement. It says any statements regarding IBM's future direction, intent, or product plans are subject to change or withdrawal without notice. So that basically means I might lie to you, but I will try not to lie to you. I will be as honest as I can be about where we are, but obviously we work very closely with our customers. We take that feedback very seriously. And so things can and will change for very good reasons. But I just want to give you an overview of where we are right now in our thinking. So what are we going to be talking about today? So first up, if there's anyone in the audience who doesn't know what ZOS Connect is, I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the product and sort of where we are. Then I'll be looking at some information about market trends that we're seeing, some of the research we've been doing, and then talking a bit more about future ideas and plans for the ZOS Connect product. So hopefully that sounds good and interesting. I'm not seeing a mass exodus from the room, so that's hopefully really good. So first off, let's roll back to 2015. This was the challenge that we had in front of us. So APIs were something that was just emerging. Everyone was sort of, okay, we were on SOA, we were on SOAP, and these RESTful API things were coming along, and there was like Swagger and RAML, and it was all very exciting. And what we were finding is that modern front-end developers were saying, I want API access to all of the services that I'm building my customer experiences out of. But companies were struggling to provide that API access when the core services that they wanted to call into were on IBM Z. So we thought we'd better do something about that. And we looked around and we said, well, you know, how are we doing access into the platform today? It was done in sort of lots of different ways in different places. And we had things like Mobile Feature Pack and Kix and, you know, the mobile platform gateway stuff in IMS. And it was all a bit different, a bit disjointed. So what we said was really we need one solution to tackle this problem. And it's exactly what we built with ZOS Connect. So ZOS Connect does two things. It does them really well. The first is that it allows you to create API interfaces to all of your data assets and services on IBM Z. The second thing is it allows your Z programs in COBOL PL1 and things to call out to API endpoints. That second one's a bit like Swagger CodeGen when you you know, generate a sort of a native library for Java or something to be able to call an API. That's really all it does. APIs to and from Z. It's probably the simplest IBM product that you ever come across. Obviously, there is a lot more to it. There's things around security and monitoring, and we do all this with the qualities of service that you expect from the Z platform. But really, this is the goal. And out of the box, we do CICS, IMS, DB2, and MQ. But this is an extensible interface. We sort of want to make sure that we don't just sort of do this one way for a set of products and then everyone else is on their own. So the interface on the back of ZOS Connect is actually extensible. We have a number of partners who have come along and created their own service providers that can plug into that interface. So if you need to get to sort of specific things, like Hogan's interesting, they came along and created a bunch of services for their core banking platform if you use CAMS2 or something like that. If you need to get to vSAN data, you can go through File Manager, you can go through DVM. If you want to do 3270, you want to do some complex orchestration behind ZOS Connect, and Hostbridge is a really good solution for that. So, extensible, hopefully we've got most things covered by now. If there are things that we haven't got covered, then let us know, and hopefully we can partner with someone to fill that gap. But we're not just an island. So everyone thinks, okay, I've got ZOS Connect, I'm done, that's the whole solution. These days, typically what you see people do is they have ZOS Connect, and in front of it, they have some kind of API orchestration or management gateway. So for IBM, we have two key products in this space. We have App Connect, which allows you to sort of connect up and do interesting flows and logic between lots of different API endpoints across your whole business. And then we have API Connect, which is sort of the gateway. This is where you publish your API endpoints and you provide, developer accounts and access and tariffs and chargeback and all that kind of stuff. And, ZOS Connect doesn't do those things. It doesn't make sense to try and solve that problem specifically on Z, when really you need to be doing that across every system in the same way, not just Z. So our job is, that transformation aspect between the native Z interfaces and the APIs. But we'll often use things that they're very natural pairing, whether it's the IBM solution or it's something else. But obviously, I'm from IBM, so I'm going to tell you about the IBM solution. Now, in terms of the way we deliver the product, obviously we didn't deliver this back in 2016 and say, okay, we're done. We're actually continuously evolving, and indeed the API space and the industry is evolving very rapidly underneath us. So one of the keys to our success in this space is really that we work very closely with, have over 100 design partners across 7 industries all around the world, and we work very closely with them to understand what they need and what's sort of the trends and things that are happening. And we deliver on a continuous delivery basis. So we drop new function into the product every month. So last year, coming to the end of 2021, so hopefully in a few months I'll be able to give you a 2021 summary. But for now, 2020 summary, we did our 12 continuous delivery releases. We covered 31 RFEs, and we made active action decisions, so sort of accepting or delivering RFEs that covered just over 1,000 votes versus, sadly, we can't say yes to everything. And, we had that sort of almost 300 there that we had to decline. But hopefully you can see that we're sort of actioning, in line with the majority of what the market needs. So in terms of how that looked, this is sort of a view of 2020 and our continuous delivery jobs. This is quite astounding. I mean, I'm sure everyone realizes that there was quite a large event that happened last year and is still going on. And somehow through all that, the team, they didn't miss a beat here. They managed to sort of pull together and find ways of working and sort of keep up this cadence and this pace. So we started off the year closing some gaps around sort of wanting to get a consistent experience in our tooling, the API editor for creating DB2 services and MQ services. We also added IMS-DB support in there as well. We improved security with pass tickets. We created a date mapping function. So it's actually quite an interesting project there of if you get into the weird and wonderful ways that people express dates in COBOL, kind of things like sort of I'm going to have a 2-digit year and a 3-digit day of the year, and you've sort of got to get that into an ISO standard date format. That's quite an interesting problem. And then, expanding policy to support DB2 allows people to flip on the fly between collections and things like that. And then the end of the year, there was a lot of work around API requester, so enhancements to allow people to dynamically select which Zeddos Connect they want to call out to in Kix with the URI map support, and sort of policy, enhanced monitoring as well towards the end of the year there. So lots of good stuff continuously dropping at sort of a whistle-stop tour. There's a lot more underneath those headlines, but you can see we've been very, very busy, and that's continued into this year as well. Again, sort of pushing on sort of monitoring and enhancements to API requester. JWT generation for API requester has been a really big one for us. So if you're calling outbound, we can now generate you a JWT in place rather than having to call out somewhere and get one for that outbound call. BiDi support for anyone who happens to be, in the Middle East, where they have right to left character sets. Probably not this audience, but important for us in terms of a globalization point of view. Recently in August, we dropped the API discovery piece. So now, instead of going to Zeddos Connect and just, hitting an endpoint and getting, this big lump of JSON, which is the Swagger doc back, you can now actually go to a web UI and sort of explore all the APIs that are available in your server, which is kind of really nice. You sort of get a Swagger UI like experience, and you can try things out. So really good for development and for people exploring what we've got as well. So lots and lots of stuff happening. The result of that is, if you do want to see what's new, we have a link there at the bottom. So ibm.biz/zoskonnect-what's new. That'll take to a place where you can see everything that's coming, and we sort of refresh that every month with the updates that we've got. So the upshot of that is that the adoption of Zeddos Connect is exploding, and actually we saw something very, very interesting in 2020, and then we saw this massive sort of spike where suddenly a lot more instances were getting deployed. We had a lot more customers, and we saw 73% growth in our in terms of deployment in that year alone. And that was quite interesting. If you sort of think about what was going on, you could draw links there to a lot of companies who maybe had a digital transformation agenda that suddenly got brought to the forefront when suddenly they couldn't interact with their customers face to face anymore. It was a bit more imperative that we build those digital experiences around the services that we provide. It's a really good story here from it's the financial arm of a big automotive company. So they're sort of the organization who do financing and sort of car loans and those sorts of things to their customers. And they were in a very, very interesting situation early 2020, just as lockdowns around the world started to happen. Everyone's sort of been impacted financially, and of course everyone thinks, got that big loan on the car, my income's changed all of a sudden, and now I can't pay it. So now I need to call them up and get an extension, reduce the monthly payments. I need a payment holiday. I need to arrange something to help me through this difficult time. And, of course, that happens normally day to day. And the process they had in place for that was you call the call center answer, and they take you through it, and they, get you an approval for that. And they used to get about 10,000 of those worldwide a month. Okay, so it's not a huge number on the grand scheme of things. Perfectly, can handle that in a call center. What they found was as lockdown started to hit, and as things particularly hit quite hard in the US, they found that 10,000 a month went to around 19,000 a day. They were getting these phone calls. Obviously, they can't deal with that. Okay, they're having to turn a lot of people away. People waiting in very long queues. Not very good experience. Lots of very worried people about what's going to happen with their loan payments. So that's not very good at all. Now, this company actually had Zeddos Connect in place for some other things. So they already had the infrastructure laid down. and they actually came up with the idea. So, okay, let's digitize the loan extension approval process. So let's make an API that accesses the programs that sort of do the risk analysis and say yes or no, or what terms we would allow, and then make that available to a web, create a web front end that uses that to provide an experience to customers that we can sort of direct them to. So if you call up, it says, if you look into this, go to this website, and you can do it online there and try and reduce some of the load. So they actually turned this around in a week. So they had the idea and they said, okay, Monday, let's start building. They created the APIs. They created this sort of very rudimentary website that just kind of, here it is, very, very straightforward process. And by Monday next week, they were able to say to their customers, right, here is the process. You can go and do this online. And they, got that peace of mind to all of their customers, which was, quite amazing to see, the impact that the technology had in allowing them to do that. But it's a really, really, nice story for us, and a great one for us to be able to share with you. Another one here, BNPP, big reference case for us, one of the biggest banks in the world. I won't go into too much detail. They did a big transformation. They had just over, I think it's about 4,500 of these sort of bespoke services and things that they built up in onto their mainframe platform over the years, and they wanted to replace that with APIs, and they're still in the process of doing that. I think they've got a few thousand down, they've got a few thousand to go, but really I think that the quote that landed with me was from the head of mainframe division, and he said that the more we can expose these applications of business logic on Z to the rest of the business, the more value that we can get for our business and for our clients, which I think the previous story shows. And they're doing, there's hundreds of different things that they're doing here across all sorts of different banking use cases. But this is a really big use case for us. Now, if you do want to find out more, we have a LinkedIn group. So if you go to ibm.biz/Zcon users, I think we're just over 300 members now. So you can request to join there, and you can start to interact with some of the other people using ZOS Connect and talk to them about what they're doing, or saying, how do you do DevOps? This is how we do DevOps. Let's compare notes. So people are quite open, quite happy to get on one-to-one calls if you ask them. So if you have questions and things, that's a really good place to go and ask. Any questions at that point? Silence in the chat. It's all too early in the morning for everybody.
There's nothing there, Tony. Nothing yet.
Okay. But despite all this success, the market is changing, and API economy has always been changing as we go along. But there's some quite seismic shifts happening, and I'm going to share a few of them with you now. So, as I said, we work very closely with our design partners and our customers to understand, what they're going to need next, and try and stay one step ahead of where people need us to be. So we have a number of activities. Yes, we've got our design partnership, but we also, we run workshops. We have a wider relationship with the Z Design Council, which is sort of a cross Z design event. So it happens periodically through the year. We have experience at deploying this technology into hundreds of clients worldwide. So we know from our field team, our sales team, our technical specialists, and our service people, they say, well, here's an issue they're having, or here's a pattern we're seeing. So we sort of collate all that. We constantly try out little prototypes and things. We have sort of skunkworks projects with a few customers saying, hey, what is it? If we're thinking about this, would this be a good idea? We sort of give that term and sort of bounce some ideas around. And always everything we're doing with validating with sponsor users before we ship it. So got a lot of sources of research and sort of input into what we do and how we build our plans. Now, something that we started to notice a few years ago now, so back in 2018, 2019, was looking at the effect that ZOS Connect has on an organization when you bring it in. So a lot of people are saying, this is brilliant, right? This is kind of Where we were, it felt like there was a brick wall between the mainframe team and the distributed teams. If you wanted to integrate with the platform, it was a bit clunky and a bit difficult. And, we couldn't really speak the same language as them. And it was, not the best experience. But ZOS Connect's kind of broken down that barrier. Everyone now speaks the same language. We're talking about open API documents, and everyone's very excited about that. And the teams are engaged, and this is a good thing. And first few projects go great. It's okay, we're going to do this one, we're going to do that one, and this all works very, very well. Question: we have Rex calling COBOL in real time, not kicks, just calls via Rex. Currently, we want to do APIs that would be instead of home Rex. Is it possible to use ZOS Connect? Okay, sorry, Mark's answered. Okay, I think you're asking if it's possible for ZOS Connect to expose standalone COBOL batch program as an API. Yes, I think the answer to that is yes. With API Requester, are you talking about calling out? Because calling out, great. If you're calling in, yes, you're right, Mark, would have to be a wireless service. But I'll let you deal with that. We'll kind of get back on topic here. So yeah, first couple of projects, everything's going really well. But actually, we all work for very big companies, and it turns out there's a lot of these teams that want, all got different API use cases. They all have different needs, and quite quickly, it almost turns into a bottleneck again, right? Some of our more advanced customers just sort of look at this and go, now I've got this problem. I've got a set of teams over here want to upgrade to the latest version to get that new date support. These guys want to stay stable and stay where they are. I've got people who need to scale out rapidly. I've got people who are like haggling over different ways they want to do security requirements they have. Yeah, this isn't great. It sort of becomes this, it slows everything down. We lost that agility. People start to disengage. This is not great. Okay, so what companies are looking to do, and the sort of natural sort of evolution of this is they're looking to say, well, okay, instead of having sort of one big integration team that deal with that ZOS Connect piece that have to, all requests come through them and everything runs in that infrastructure, what we want to do is form teams around business functions. So if I'm a bank, I might have a mortgages team and an auto finance team and a home insurance team and a retail banking team and an investment banking team, and they're going to own the front end experience. They're going to own integrations and the potentially some or all of the back end as well. So there's probably a line there where you say, okay, some of the back end's really shared and we're not doing that, but at least the kind of the front ends of the back ends, like the specific applications and things, you want to try and build a team that owns that end to end. Okay, and we're talking to people say, okay, this is interesting. We better think about what it will mean if you start using ZOS Connect in this way. Is it going to work? Is it going to fit? Or is it going to cause problems or cause friction? Now, of course, the first question is how many people are looking to move in this direction. So we did a bit of a survey back in 2019, and we found that just over 80% of our customers had this in mind. In the next few years, they said, okay, I'm probably going to have to move to that model. I'm going to have to move to these sort of more end-to-end teams and sort of decentralize that ownership. So okay, we really better pay attention here and sort of take this seriously. And the first thing you look at this, you say, well, this isn't really a technology problem. This is a problem around people and process and organization and culture change. And, it's a very human thing. We're not just going to say, hey, here's a piece of technology that allows you to now work in this way. But what we did observe is that technology can absolutely get in the way. You can have the wrong form factor, the wrong, technology is demanding you do it sort of in a more centralized way, and that makes it very difficult to work in this new way. So, we could absolutely hinder this and get in the way. At the same time, we could have technology that's designed to fit in this world a bit better. So we can sort of facilitate it if we sort of go, it naturally wants to work this way. So we're naturally going to help you do that transition. But, we're not going to be a silver bullet here and say, we can sell you something that's going to help you make that transition. Everyone's going to do that at their own pace. We certainly need to be cognizant of the fact that ZOS Connect is going to be operating in this new world, and we have to understand what that means. So that led us to what is required to make sure that we facilitate this and not get in the way of it. So the first thing is rather obviously all around people and process. So the big change that's happening is that we're taking that central, this is just conceptually, right? ZOS Connect aside, if you're doing this with any integration technology, you're moving from having an integration team and then app teams that consume that integration to having, that integration team decentralized and sort of that, distributed ownership across the teams. Okay, that does a couple of things. So first is that those teams have to be able to move at their own pace. They have to be isolated from one another. You've got no sort of central oversight anymore. And the second thing is quite interesting is because those teams are now owning this whole thing end to end, rather than having, say in today's world, you might have the ZOS Connect team and the App Connect team and the API Connect team doing the gateway. Now you have a single team that owns, auto insurance, and they have to do their gateway piece, their integration flow, they have to do the API enablement, they have to do the core applications. So they're kind of working across, and the front end application is ultimately consuming the API, but they're having to work across all of that. And it would be really nice if all of those integration pieces all work the same, so that when they have team members, they can transition between those things and they don't have this friction of having to learn different tools that work in different ways. So there's kind of the two things. I need isolation, I need commonality across my tools. Okay, cool. Let's go a layer deeper. What do we need to do from an architectural perspective to support this? Well, obviously we need those integrations, those isolated granular integrations need to be able to be built independently of each other. It's no good, if a team wants to make a change and I have my big monolithic infrastructure, I don't want to have to sort of do like a rebuild and redeploy of everyone's stuff and disrupt everyone. So I need to be able to do these granular, repeatable builds of just the piece of the integration that I'm changing. If I'm changing a thing in the gateway, shouldn't have to change the rest of it. If I'm changing a thing in ZOS Connect, shouldn't have to change everyone's ZOS Connect. So that's the first thing. Second thing is teams are going to want to scale at different rates. So, I should be able to take one of those pieces and, this is a particular busy thing, or our retail banking API, really busy, lots and lots of activity. So that's going to have to scale out independently of other things. You don't want to sort of force everyone to scale. I've got one server with all of my APIs in it. If anyone in there wants to scale, I have to scale everyone out. That adds to complexity, perhaps to teams that sort of didn't want that extra complexity. And you also need to minimize the blast radius, right? There's a whole thing here around resilience. And if everyone's sharing the same infrastructure, then, so there's a team over here and they've released a new version of the API and it's running dog slow. And now that's affecting my world in a different team. And that's no good. So, isolation, again, really important. But that resilience is really important. So yes, isolation is key to the resilience, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, this is sort of what you end up having to go to. You need this fine-grained deployment pattern. So then we start to look at, well, what technology can we apply to achieve this, right? And really, this is all about moving from, a traditional sort of call it nurtured piece of infrastructure that we sort of know and love, and we sort of care for the integration platform, to a much more cloud native style of infrastructure. It's much more disposable. Oh, if that one goes wrong, throw it away, spin up another one. And we need to make sure that the tasks that the teams are doing are standardized across all of those things. Again, the team's now responsible for a bunch of things in that integration in the end-to-end flow. It's no good if I have to do security one way in the gateway product and I have to do security a different way in in a downstream product. It's no good if sort of operationally sort of deployments and management and monitoring all work differently across that set of products, because that becomes that's a lot of work for the team. A lot of you need a very high skill set to be able to operate as a team across all of those things. So if you sort of take a step back and do the engineering thing of, well, do we have anything today that helps us achieve this? And you sort of say, well, of course we do. We have OCI containers in the industry. We have standard platforms like Kubernetes and Red Hat. This is exactly what they do. And, really that they've sort of been proven that if you start to move to this kind of model, that you allow people to sort of minimize that skill set and that sort of barrier to entry. You allow the team to say, look, we're going to handle security and deployment and build and everything the same way across all aspects of this solution. And actually the only thing that I need to understand now is the artifacts and input. What are the things I'm putting into the gateway? What are the things I'm putting into my orchestration integration platform? But actually, in terms of deployment and management, they all sort of get deployed and managed the same way. If we can get everything down to being just a container, so this has a lot of benefit. And okay, we're sort of looking at this, going, okay, this is kind of interesting. Could scratching our heads, could we start containerizing ZOS Connect? Is this something we should do? Is this something we're seeing elsewhere, right? And at this point, we're sort of, I'm telling a story over a few years here, so we're sort of getting to some conclusions around people working this way. There's got needs around people and architecture and technology to support working in that way. And we sort of go, well, is anyone else seeing this? So we talked to our colleagues in IBM Cloud and say, are you seeing this? They say, yes, we are seeing this. We have a name for it, and so do analysts. And their name was Agile Integration. You say, okay. And the three things we talked about there are actually the core principles of Agile integration. So we got people and process and architecture and technology. And it's all around that decentralized ownership and fine-grained deployment and a cloud-native experience. And really the outcome that you're trying to drive, and you can kind of think back to the first slide where we had this big bottleneck, not very agile, things are not moving very quickly. The outcome that everyone wants is all the projects can move forward at their own pace, as quickly as is possible for them. So, people and process, I'm getting development agility, the architecture, I'm getting deployment agility, and with the right technology, I'm getting operational agility. And this is something that's quite established now, at least for the last few years. There's a lot of literature written about it. There's a great site there if you download the slides from IBM that sort of talks to a lot of the aspects of this. But various analysts and other companies as well, sort of, if you just Google for Agile integration, there's lots of people talking about this particular model and this particular pattern. So any questions at that point? Okay.
Just to say, Mark has been doing a fine job in the background for you.
Thank you. Okay, so we know that Agile integration is one thing that's certainly happening. The ownership models are changing. Z teams are being pressured to how do we provide this sort of self-serve enablement of hundreds of these hybrid teams, okay? Is there anything else? So we start looking around and we say, well, beyond that, anything else going on? And in fact, there is. So brings us to the idea of API first. And really, if you cast your mind back to 2015, 2016, just the fact that I could send an HTTP GET request to some endpoint and that would call a Kix program and give me back some data from my mainframe in a JSON format, that was super cool. People were just like, that's enough, that's amazing, that solves all of my problems. Now, it doesn't, and the way ZOS Connect works today is very much geared towards that. So start with your COBOL program, we just get you to JSON as quickly as possible. But the problem you have is as soon as the company starts to create more than a few APIs, there will be someone in that company that will go, whoa, hang on a minute, everyone slow down. We need to get some kind of standardization here. We can't have a payment looking one way here and a payment looking a different way here, or the way we express a customer's address needs to be the same in every place, and how are we structuring the paths and things to make the APIs look consistent and be more consumable to the outside world. So company, obviously, as soon as there's more than a few APIs, it's going to naturally gravitate to having an API governance board or a design council or some organization that centrally sort of says this is how we want to work. And that's okay. You can still sort of work in a bottom-up mode with that because they're in your company, so you can negotiate with them. Things slow down a bit because you start saying, can we just tweak the way that address is going to look, because in our COBOL it's like nested in this way, so can we sort of just say it's going to be that way because that's the only thing we can do, and that would avoid some extra mapping. That would be good. So you can have a bit of a negotiation there, and maybe you can still get on with bottom up, but it does slow things down. It causes a bit of friction. It's not great. The next thing that obviously happens is it doesn't take more than a few companies in an industry to start producing public APIs before someone turns around and says, whoa, hang on a minute, we've got all these banks, all these insurance companies producing different APIs to do the same thing. Maybe we want some consistency across that. So you get government stepping in, you get regulatory bodies stepping in and saying that, we're going to create some standards around how this stuff should look. And you got sort of BIAN, the banking industry architecture network, you've got PSD2, great examples of this kind of behavior. And at this point, gets a lot more difficult because they have absolutely no sympathy for how your mainframe app is written, right? They're saying, I'm going to design this API to be the most beautiful and consumable API standard that is very, very focused on the end consumer. And it's kind of non-negotiable at this point. This is what you will implement. And we're not going to, pander to the needs of like 5-6 different companies' implementations behind the scenes. And what this means is you start to move from a world where, yes, what we do today, bottom up, I take my COBOL, I convert it into a JSON object, which I can then trim out and rename things. But it still looks like my COBOL object. It means we have to move into a world where, which we call API first. I've got to start with the contract, which is fixed. I've got my COBOL or my PL1, which is fixed, and I need to tie the two together with perhaps more functional mapping. Might need to do conditional logic, might need to do splits and joins, and all sorts of manipulation of data to get it into the form that the API design says we need it in. So that's sort of first thing that's changing. A layer below that, something that's going on is obviously the move to OpenAPI 3. So those specs that are being laid out saying this is what you must adhere to, they are now typically in an OpenAPI 3 format. And this is quite interesting. Obviously, when we first started, we were still very much in a war between Swagger and RAML, and they eventually called a truce and they joined forces and formed OpenAPI 2. And OpenAPI 2 was great for us. That had a very restricted set of JSON schema in terms of what you can describe in an API request to response, and almost by happy accident that sort of lined up very, very well with the kind of structures that you can describe quite easily in COBOL and PL1. So there's sort of a very good synergy between the kind of things that we can do here and what was allowed in OpenAPI 2. OpenAPI 3, whilst they've simplified the structure of the document and made a lot of things reusable within the document, they've actually added a lot more functionality and a lot more complexity. So all sorts of interesting things here around links and callbacks and stuff like that. But you can have arrays and things in all sorts of different places. You've got a much more extended set of JSON schema support. So you can have things that are nullable. You can have polymorphism with sort of one-ofs and any-ofs. And actually with OpenAPI 3.1, they've just gone, nah, you know what? Anything you can describe in JSON, in standard JSON schema, will allow. And that causes us a lot more problems. Okay, so there's a lot of sort of things that we say, that's going to be a difficult thing to describe in a COBOL object. So that kind of makes API requesters particularly challenging in this world for COBOL and PL1. But Yeah, again, for a provider, we need that kind of functional mapping. It becomes quite essential. So basically, these are the two things that next few years are going to become extremely important. We need to keep pace with. So we've got our agile integration there, and we've got our API first. Z is no longer the boss. We have to make sure that we can change and manipulate our data and services and into the form that the business or the government or regulatory body demands you get transformed into. So any questions about that? Okay, cool. All right. So what are we doing about it? Well, there are a few things already in progress across IBM. So first, Cloud Pak for integration. I'm not sure if anyone, well, I've already mentioned it, but if you're not aware, is a set of capabilities, basically everything you need for integration in one box from IBM Cloud. So they've got API gateway, they've got an orchestration platform, they've got asynchronous messaging and events, they've got file transfer and what do you call? How do you describe data power? Like a sort of a traffic management router kind of awesome thing, right? But basically, they have this as a platform where everything works consistently together. They've fully embraced that agile integration model, so everything is containerized. It's designed that as a team, I can come in here and say, right, for my project, I'm going to need a gateway and an orchestration thing and some messaging, and you can sort of stand that up and do what you need to do. But in terms of the deployment, that all gets deployed into an OpenShift cluster as a single thing, and it's sort of managed by Cloud Pak for integration. So that's really good. But Z support, yes, they've got a bit of MQ. Maybe I can call into DB2 with some JDBC, but they're not there in terms of oh, I want to import a copybook, or I want to do the things that Zedos Connect. A lot of the time they're expecting that you've already got an API endpoint that you're integrating across, because these days, who doesn't have an API endpoint? So whilst this supports the model really well, it kind of gets a bit clunky when you have to use Zedos Connect in conjunction with this. So that's the first thing that we've got. Good strides there along the agile integration path. Obviously, this all runs. IBM has a wider hybrid cloud strategy, so it's not the only Cloud Pak. There are lots of Cloud Paks. There's things for data and AI, and the strategy is really that these will all sit on top of Red Hat OpenShift, and that can be run on any platform, or public cloud, IBM's public cloud, other people's public cloud, your on-premise systems. You'll see there even IBM Z and Linux One. But the idea is that this infrastructure can run wherever you need it, and the implication of that for Z is actually quite interesting. So you sort of get two things. So first of all, if you're integrating with your data on Z, you can move the integration as close to that data as it needs to be. You can move that application as close to data as it needs to be. So you're no longer in a world now where you sort of go, well, I need to do this stuff in a Cloud Pak, in a cloud native way, my front end application, but now that has to run a million miles away, and I've got all this latency, and if it needs to be quite chatty with my Z stuff, that's a problem. No, you can actually run this on the Z platform now, right? You can run it Linux on Z, and they're pushing to have this on ZCX as well. So that's really, really good. Second thing that's awesome about this is it massively lowers the talent gap for sort of people to get engaged with the platform. So if you said to someone, okay, you want to come and write an application for the Z box that kind of interacts with Z data and services, and that's where you want to be building it, you can, anyone can turn up with standard sort of container OpenShift skills and get going with that, and that sort of just breaks down those barriers. It allows those sort of hybrid teams to form. Yes, we've got some stuff that we all know is sort of core stuff happening in Kix and IMS and things, but they feel that the platform's a lot more open. They feel that they can engage with these teams a lot more. So really, really good. This hybrid strategy is sort of, IBM is probably one of the only companies in the world that's sort of really delivering on allowing you to sort of run those cloud native applications and technologies wherever you need them on whatever platform you need them, sort of bring the strengths of the platforms and the form factors of the deployment to bear to your solution. So the other thing that's going on is we made an announcement of a statement of direction around containers. So this is sort of a very high level diagram of the ecosystem that exists currently with containers. So yes, you've got Linux, they're the big one, various different hardware architectures. And for our sake, we can run them on x86 servers. We can run them with ZCX and ZLinux as well. Windows also have a container architecture, a container running on x86. So, that's all good. And what IBM's announced is the statement of direction to introduce z/OS to this ecosystem. So that's having a native z/OS container running on the S390X architecture, running inside z/OS. So this is something that the team are working on. You have to engage with our design partnerships to sort of learn more about this and the progress that they're making. But this is something that's coming in future. But I'm sure you can see if some of the things we're looking at with, we need to go containerized, this becomes a very useful tool in our box over the next few years. So that's all I'll say on that. That's all I can say on that. But there's a link to the statement of direction if you want to read more there. Specifically for z/OS Connect, the support for OpenAPI 3 is absolutely strategic. So we have a statement of direction that we put out last year, and this is support for OpenAPI 3 for both provider and requester, and we have 2 RFEs accepted in that space as well. So rest assured, this is completely strategic for us. We're actually hopefully very close to delivering on this. I'll show you a bit more about what we're doing in that space in a sec. Any questions on that?
There's nothing in the chat, Tony.
Okay, perfect. So in terms of what we're doing specifically in z/OS Connect, I wanted to, we're sort of at a point now, it's quite exciting. It's something you can sort of see has been bubbling away for a few years and sort of working out what we're going to do here. We're at a point now we can actually start sharing what some of this is going to look like from a z/OS Connect perspective. Now, I'm going to put that big disclaimer in red there. Anything I say from this point on, the stuff I said above is stuff that IBM is just doing, and they are statements of direction, they're public knowledge. And, this stuff is still very much in design. We're still working with customers, things function may change for all sorts of reasons, but I wanted to share with you where we are, because we are getting close to being able to deliver on those open API 3 and API first capabilities. So first thing is that obviously our goals are around API first and agile integration, as I've already said. What this means for z/OS Connect is that we want to allow you to sort of start with the API document. We want rich functional mapping, and we want the tooling that we create to work in a very similar way to the rest of the stack in terms of your integration stack that currently works in a very cloud native way. So whether I'm using IBM Cloud Platform integration or I'm using a different integration platform, most of them work with sort of web UIs and cloud native development patterns. So we want to fit in with that. Okay, that's a very natural thing for us to do. The second thing, from agile integration point of view, we absolutely need to allow teams to self-serve their z/OS Connect environments, to take ownership of their z/OS Connect APIs. And the most natural way for us to look to do that is to support running z/OS Connect in OCI compliant containers and deploy, as I said, on top of that IBM hybrid cloud infrastructure, most likely involving OpenShift, but containers, if you want to pick them up and try and run them wherever, then it's an open standard, so you're more than welcome to do that. So they're from a high level, they're the 2 goals. What I'm going to do now is just sort of dive into some of the UI specifics around how we might deliver that API first functional mapping with OpenAPI 3. So first up, this is, if you think about how the tool works today with z/OS Connect, you come into your Eclipse tooling and you open up your API project, and the first thing it really asks you to do is, okay, create your paths. What's your API going to look like? Okay, well, that's not how the world works anymore. You've been given an API. Now, you can still work in that bottom-up mode if you want in a new tool. I'm just not going to show that today. But the first thing you're going to get is a web UI for starters. So that's a bit of a change. But we're going to have a dialog that says, well, import your spec. What have you been given? So, standard, select a file, or it's on this URL, it's in GitHub here, and we'll kind of pull that in. So we pull the API in, and we have an interface that allows you to explore that API. So you can go down, you can look at all the paths and the methods and the schemas. You can look at security schemes and the various components and how they all link together. So really getting that understanding and that feel for what this API does and what I'm going to need to do to implement it. So if we go into one of the specific operations, so here, this is an API that, we've got a couple of things. We've got a list of employees and then be able to get an employee specifically by ID. It's a very, very straightforward API. Anyone who knows the DB2 sample will kind of recognize the sort of functionality we're talking about here. But here we're looking at, get the list of employees. And what this is showing now is the flow of that request. So it says, I'm going to get an API request coming in. Now, obviously, we want to pipe that to some ZOS asset, which we haven't defined yet. And then whatever that returns, I need to create a response. And that response is either 200, everything went okay, or 500, everything went bad. And I might have a number of different responses. They can all have different schemas. And that's something that we're going to have to handle. So first thing is to create a ZOS asset. So we say for this, that I've got a DB2 service that gets me a list of employees. So we can define all the values here. We've actually got a pretty slick interface where you sort of import from DB2. It gives you a list, it connects to DB2. It gives you a list of, everything that's in there. And you sort of say, oh, okay, that's the service I want. And it'll pull all the details in, the schemas and everything for you there. So we've created our DB2 service, and now we have to map the API request into the input to that service. So down at the bottom here, we've highlighted our DB2 service, and we can see that the DB2 service takes 2 inputs into its query. So it's looking for a department code and a job type, right? Because we want to filter that list down, right? But it will allow you to wildcard. And now if I sort of go into these boxes and say, well, what do I want to map into here? So it's no longer like a sort of point-to-point drag and drop thing. This is now much more, okay, what are all of the things that are in context from the API request? I've got path parameters, I've got query parameters, I've got stuff from the request body, I've got cookies, I've got things that are in headers. And I can sort of go down that list and say, okay, well, here's all the objects, here's all the things that are in context according to the Open API spec. And I can select any of them and sort of use them with my functional mapping to populate this field for DB2. So in this case, we've taken a couple of cookies that happen to be there. So we're saying, okay, I'm taking the department, I'm taking the job, but they may or may not be there, they're optional. So we're saying if it exists, then use it. And if it doesn't, then we're just going to wildcard with a percent, and just say to DB2, okay, just all departments, all jobs. So, already there, a bit of functional logic, bit of cool functionality in there. So we then move on to the response. And the first thing we need to do is say, okay, based on the response we get back from DB2, how are we going to discriminate and select which of our API responses we want to return? So here we have 200 and 500, but if you were maybe getting an employee by ID, you might have a 404 not found, you might have a 403 security thing that you want to return. So you need to say, well, how, based on what DB2 says, how are we going to, select between them? So at this point, we sort of know that, well, we know it's a 200 okay if DB2 returns some results. Okay, so in the DB2 response schema, there's this result set output field that's an array. And so we're going to use an array function from our mapping language here, and we're going to do a count. So we're going to count the items in the array, and if that count is greater than 0, we know we got some stuff back. We know we're good to go to our 200 response. So that's kind of, again, showing the power of anything that's in context. Like at this point, when we're on the response side, you've now got all this additional stuff that's in context. You've got everything that came back from DB2, its response and sort of context and stuff from that request to DB2. So again, works in a very similar way. It's not point to point. It's more just pick from the menu of what you want to pull out and use. So we go to our 200 response mapping, and what we're doing here on the left-hand side where it says body and then for each, what this is saying is we have the API said, well, what I want is an array of objects, and each object is going to have a summary with a bio, and then a personal that's going to have nested fields of first name, middle name, last name, etc. And it's just saying, well, how do you want to populate this from the return data that came back in DB2? So the first thing that's really neat is that we've got a results set within that DB2 schema. And that's actually, nested a few levels down, but it is an array. And we can say, oh, well, we've got an array here. If we pull that up, to the top level in that for each, if we now use fields from within that result set, so from within an item in the result set, it's now going to loop over that result set and use, like in the first entry, it's going to use first name, last name, etc. from the first item. For the second item, it's going to use first name, last name from the second item, etc. So that's the first thing that's really cool here. We're sort of enabling you to do it. If you pick things from outside the array, it's just going to set them to the same value for every item in the response. So you can use things outside the array, but if you use it within the array, then it sort of does proper mapping between item 1, item 2, etc. So that's the first thing. Second thing for bio, I mean, we could get complex here, but all we've done is just kind of concatenated first name and last name with space between, but you can do all sorts of string functions here. You can do, so uppercase, lowercase, you can trim things, make everything look beautiful. So we also have, what we're actually using here is a technology called JSONARTA. It's an open source mapping language. So if you go to jasonarta.org, you can read a lot more about it. You can try it out. You can put a JSON object and then use the query language to explore it. But it's effectively allows you to interrogate JSON objects and do sort of functional sort of mapping between fields and things. But we have an implementation of that language. So we have an engine that implements the JSONARTA spec. And that's what gives us these kind of functions. So we're doing something quite cool here where, we have a birth date that may be stored in some, arbitrary way on the mainframe, but we've actually have a lot of date functions here to allow you to format that date in different ways and kind of tell us, well, this date is of this form. Can you format it into a standard ISO, timestamp and things like that. So that's how we do response mapping. So what happens then is our users, we've got a nice little test button up here, and they can click that test button, and they'll be taken to the Liberty API discovery interface where they can explore the API that they've just created, all the various paths. They can come down here and click into this get that they've just implemented for the employees. We can set a department and a job, in the cookies, or we could leave them blank, and then we can execute that call to the API, and we get back, some lovely kind of formatted JSON based on that data. Now, the really cool thing with that is there was no server involved, right? This is all from the tool connecting straight into the system of record. So, that's another thing, a change that we're making so that you don't have, to take the load off the infrastructure team. You'll no longer need development servers because the tool itself has a form of the server in it to be able to, quickly cycle and kind of run these APIs. So, so we got the information back and we're done, right? We've taken something that was, we had this, nested output from DB2 with fields and things that didn't really look like the API that had been specified by our regulatory body. And we've taken this result set out, and we've just said, well, at the top level, we've got an array, so we're going to use that array there, and then we're going to format out all of this data in completely different nesting structure. We've taken things and changed the formats of numbers and dates, and it's sort of really interesting stuff that we can do there. So hopefully you see that's quite a change that's going on, but hopefully a positive change. Hopefully you can see that I'll bring us much more in line with the rest of Cloud Platform integration. Anyone who knows those tools will have noticed a lot of the UI is kind of borrowed from some of the things they do. We hope that in future you'll have this seamless experience for a hybrid team where they can design their APIs in API Connect, then go down to ZOS Connect, implement them into their Z assets, then use the result of that in a wider integration with App Connect, and then go back to API Connect and publish them. So we sort of bring those worlds much closer together. And I guess final thought that I'll leave you with is what if ZOS Connect became a first-class component in your CP4I integrations? Would that make things better or easier for you in the long run? I've got Ian there, says, fab, when can I have it? Great feedback, Ian. Hopefully very soon. We're looking at the beginning of next year. If you do want to know more, great segue. There's a link here in the presentation to where you can sign up to our design partnership. It's for the whole of Z, but if you say you're interested in ZOS Connect, then we'll get you on board. So yeah, in summary, we're the market's leading solution for API integration on Z, but there are trends in the market that around agile integration, API first, means that we're going to have to continue to move forward. IBM's very well placed to deal with these challenges, and ZOS Connect is going to be very much a part of that strategy in the future. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. Please do submit your session feedback, good or bad. I love to hear it. It helps me get better for the future, and normal stuff, disclaimers, etc. But yeah, if you have any questions, I will take them now.
Hey, Tony, could you just put the slide with the QR code for the feedback?
Yeah.
Up just while we field some questions. I mean, you noticed the comment from Ian Thompson. Fab, when can I have it? I think Rob has had to go off. He's probably installing that Cloud Pack. So you've got me doing the wrap up here. Thank you very much for all your efforts there. That was a real whistle-stop tour, but it did open it up a lot. And I think you shared some very interesting information that a lot of people may not have heard of before. So thanks for that, Tony. We've got another session coming up in about 25 or so minutes with Mark Hiscox. He will be continuing the journey with ZOS Connect for you. So please supply your feedback on Tony's session, and we'll be back in 25 minutes or so on the Kix track for Mark's session. So thanks all for joining. I'm going to close this session now. Thanks, Tony.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Bye, everyone.